maternal love is the love that's going to change the future of mankind. So we'd like you to look
we like to say peoplekind, not necessarily mankind, because it's more inclusive.
There we go, exactly. Yes, thank you.
We can all learn from each other.
Apparently, not only was Justin Trudeau making up peoplekind, he was also mansplaining at that point, because you can't win when you get into bed with social justice. It is no longer mankind, it is peoplekind, and it is no longer gingerbread man, it is gingerbread person. Because this is going to tackle sexism, at least according to the Scottish Parliament. Gingerbread men have been banned at the Scottish Parliament in a bid to reduce sexism. Really? How much sexism was reduced by using gingerbread person instead of gingerbread men? Just out of interest, do we have any kind of quantifiable metrics for the diversity officer to produce to us and say, yes, by changing gingerbread men to gingerbread persons, we've reduced the amount of sexism in the Scottish Parliament by 3.2% or something like that? I mean, what I'm saying is something quantifiable by which these people can be held to account. How can we ever say that, yes, they are doing a good or bad job if everything they do is fucking nebulous? The tasty treats have been replaced by gingerbread persons amid fears that the traditional name caused offence. With who? Who was being offended by the term gingerbread men? Who was offended by this? I want that person to stand up and be counted. I want them to say to the world, yes, it is I who is offended by the concept of a gingerbread man, because there is no gingerbread woman, and this kind of sexism and blatant gender discrimination has to stop. The Scottish Parliament's coffee shop made the change as part of a drive at Holyrood to cut out sexism. Again, how much sexism is this expected to cut out? Just out of interest. When 30% of women working in the Scottish Parliament say that they have been sexually harassed, one might say that responding to these concerns by renaming gingerbread men to gingerbread persons seems like it might be an attempt to sweep this under the rug, as it were. As in, not take these complaints seriously, and instead focus on something utterly trivial and completely pointless. But by making the names gender neutral, Parliament hopes to foster a more inclusive working environment for female and non-binary staff. Well, that's exactly my point. I think that maybe if there was less sexual harassment in the Scottish Parliament, then that would be more inclusive. But the thing is, it's not really about being more inclusive, is it? It's about making sure that there is absolutely nothing that is outside of the purview of political correctness. I mean, most people who are genuinely concerned about problems would say, I don't care how you refer to these gingerbread men, but they do care. They're really bothered by it. They think that there might be widespread offence caused by this. They don't think there's widespread offence caused by the fact that 1 in 3 women in the Scottish Parliament has been sexually harassed. That's, I guess, part of the job. It's just part and parcel of working at the Scottish Parliament. But gingerbread men, well, we can do something about that. Scottish Conservatives have argued that changing the name of a cafe item trivialises the issue of sexual harassment. Well, of course it does. I mean, this is nothing but trivialities. But the thing is, they don't care about sexual harassment. To the progressive left, in my opinion, after dealing with them for such a long time, I think that dealing with sexual harassment is actually not their aim. Their aim is just to gain control of whatever space it is within which they're operating. And this allegation of sexual harassment, the claims of it, are just a tool with which they used to do that. Look, we're going to deal with the sexual harassment. Let us control everything, right down to the minutiae of things like what you call this biscuit. And we will reduce sexual harassment. We'll reduce sexism and gender inequality. We won't be able to prove that we've done it, and at the end of the day, 1 in 3 women are still being harassed in the Scottish Parliament, but trust us, this is going to work. And the same goes for Santa Claus himself. At the end of the day, why should Santa Claus be a man? Why should he be considered male? Some say Santa should be rebranded female and gender neutral. People who I think we would broadly term as idiots would say that. There's no particular reason that Santa needs to be gender neutral or female in any way, shape or form. Unless you're annoyed that men have a cultural icon that women don't have. This is a cultural icon that can only be filled by a male figure, a man's role as it were, And if you're a feminist and you hate masculinity, and you're looking to deconstruct male role models and male icons in culture, well then you'd do something like this, wouldn't you? Graphics Springs, a logo creation company from the United States, got the input of 400 people from the US and the United Kingdom about ways to modernize St. Nick. Why would we need to modernize Santa? The whole point is it's an old tradition. I mean, I don't see what we would need to modernize this for, but okay. It used the top suggestions to survey 4,000 people, on how they envisage a 2018 version of the big man or woman. In terms of what gender Santa should be, nearly 19% of US respondents said the patriarch of Christmas. He's not, I don't think we describe Santa as a patriarch, but okay. But they said that he should be neither male nor female. More than 10% said a woman should fill the role. Well, why? Should a man fill the role of Mrs. Claus? Why should a man take that kind of signifier and cultural icon away from women? But this left a little over 70% of respondents affirming a male St. Nick. So the vast majority of people don't want Santa Claus to be gender neutral or female. They're not going to be listened to, are they? Because at the end of the day, this is all about stamping out sexism. In other fields, respondents were largely in favour of leaving Santa Claus in the typical sense. I can understand why. Why would you bother changing Santa Claus? More than 73% said he doesn't need to drink beer, look younger, have tattoos, go on a diet, get a new hairstyle, or shave his beard. You mean he doesn't need to do things that might fundamentally change the aspect of the character that would make him not Santa Claus, which changing him to female or gender neutral would absolutely do. He would no longer be Santa Claus as we remember him, because a core facet of the character will have been changed. This is again why I was against making Roland Deschain from the Dark Tower Idris Elba, a black guy. It's like, well, I'm sorry, there is a fundamental aspect of the character on which much of the story hinges, and it requires him to be white for any of the dynamics with certain other black characters to have any weight or impact whatsoever. If you take that away, it's no longer the same character, and the same thing applies to Santa Claus and these characteristics. 57% said that Santa shouldn't have to change out his customary sleigh for transportation. What, were Peter offended, were they? Well, I can't believe he's using reindeer to pull that sleigh. But this is how progressive media are reporting it. People think Santa should now be female or gender neutral. Oh, just people. A minority of people. A very small number of people per head of the general population. And again, that's assuming that these surveys were even done in a representative manner, which I can't prove that they were. If you're polling 500 or 4,000 people or whatever in California, say Los Angeles or Silicon Valley, something like that, then I think you're probably going to get a different number of people who say, yes, I think that Santa should be a woman, than if you're doing somewhere in Texas or Arkansas or something like that. Piers Morgan, of course, objected to this, saying, Father Christmas, as his name suggests, is male. Father Christmas, for all of the time, has been Father Christmas. He's called Father Christmas. Yes, we know, Piers, but that's not an argument. That's just you saying, well, he is Father Christmas, therefore. Okay, well, why does that matter? Make an argument about this, Piers. It's not good enough to simply be in opposition. You have to tell them why they're wrong and give people a positive framework with which to push back against the far-left nonsense. Going back to our gingerbread people, though, the Scottish Sun don't know why they're trying to make them just people. They say that the mindset that decides gingerbread men must become gingerbread persons makes just one word a cause for offence, and it's not offensive to be a man. Well, depends who you're talking to, really, doesn't it? It could be offensive to be a man, but that's actually not what they're saying, even though they probably believe that. What they're saying is it's offensive that there should be something that is a gender role to which a woman is not eligible, because that is in of itself discriminatory, and rightfully so in some cases. I don't think that men should compete in women's sports and women in men's sports because there is a demonstrable physical difference between women and men. Therefore, discrimination between women and men when it comes to sports is not just sensible, it's totally justifiable, and it's actually, in my opinion, unjustifiable to allow men to compete in women's sports and vice versa. Not that it has much of a negative impact the other way around, but you know what I mean. The point is, they don't want anything to be just left as male only, because they see that as a bastion of the patriarchy, and something that they have to attack directly. As dumb as that sounds, that even goes down to gingerbread men, because these people are totalitarians and there is literally no reason for them to stop.